guess I've always been a little bit of a rebel. I became a rebel after high school, but I think it was that rebellious side in me.
Jen, welcome to Money Moves for Latinas. Can you share a little bit about your personal journey and tell us how you've been doing with money?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. As a Latina that's been podcasting, I really love when more podcasts pop up for Latinas by Latinas. So thank you so much. And thank you so much for doing this. So, in terms of a little bit about me, and you asked what, how I got started, or just about my journey, you
Oh
said.
yeah, your journey with money. Like how did you
Okay.
start getting good with money and you became an accredited financial counselor and you now help other Latinas gain financial confidence and get rid of debt, like start investing. So I love that.
Yeah, so basically, my financial journey really started when I was little. I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and I came to the States when I was about 8 years old. So it's just been a little while ago, not too long ago. And one of the things that I noticed in the time that we were in Colombia, my dad's an American citizen, and even though both my parents were first gen to go to college, so they had their college education, financially, there was a lot of tension maintaining jobs, or especially for my dad as a foreigner in Colombia, it was hard. And so there was a lot of tension in the relationship when it came to money. So there was a lot of arguments, there was a lack of money, which caused tension. And so I saw a lot of that the lack of money was not a good thing and it caused issues. And so my parents made the decision to move to the US and I had to start all over. And then there's still the lack of money. So I early on, my parents, all I heard, especially from my mom, was we don't have the money. If I asked for something, is we don't have the money. So early on, like we came to the States I was maybe 9, 10 years old when I started asking for money and to buy little things here and there. And the answer was like, we don't have it. So I stopped. And I would look for babysitting jobs, trying to figure out how I can have my own money. And I knew from then that because I heard that so much, I knew that when I grew up, I didn't want to be in that spot where I tell my kids, we don't have the money. So I wanted to be financially in a better spot when I came to the adult, when I became an adult. So fast forward, I became an adult. I wasn't actually an accredited financial counselor. I didn't start my journey in terms of my career. I got married to my husband, who is an active duty member of the United States Air Force. So we've moved around a lot. And in that journey, one of the things that was important to me, two things. Since we were moving a lot, we knew we wanted to have kids. And my career, having a career was important to me, but I also wanted to be present and at home with our kids whenever we had them at that time. And so having a career, it's kind of like having my cake and eating it too. I wanted to have a career, but I wanted to be at home with the kids. So that's what I worked towards. So when we had our first son, even though I had a corporate career or 9 to 5 job for 2.5 years because we got married, and 2.5 years later, my son was born. And so life kind of went on. We adjusted from two incomes to one. And I wish I had documented it because I'm like, I don't know how we really did it, but I wish I had documented it. And later on, as I was trying to figure out what do I make a career out of, because I had a master's, bachelor's, master, and my husband's like, well, you like finances, and I stumbled upon becoming an accredited financial counselor, and then I decided, well, I can do this from home. And what I didn't know is I was like building a business, because me in my eyes, I'm like, I would never have a business. But I also noticed in those years was that we didn't have our money all together. Yet, even though I had read personal finance books in my family and in my circle, I was looked upon as the smart one with money. And even though we were doing good things with money, we were savers, we were putting money into retirement, we still didn't have it together. We still took money, we would deplete our emergency savings. We would take money out of the 4K, borrow it for big purchases. So didn't have our things together. And in that, I realized that what a big the impact that my upbringing had on money. So even though I had the financial skills, my mindset, my upbringing had an impact on the relationship with money, which therefore that led to not really having all our things together, if that makes sense.
So Jen, you basically grew up in a normal Latina household. Like we struggle with money since we were kids. It was the same thing. I grew up in a single family mom, a mom with my mom divorced my dad very, very young. I think I was 2 years old and I'm the youngest. So everything it was always no. No, I didn't grow up learning anything about money at all until I became an adult and it was like,
Mm,
whoa, after golpetazos, that's how
claro.
we learned, about money. So this is why I love bringing new guests, especially Latinos like you. You're doing amazing. You have a nice podcast. In your
Yeah.
podcast, Her Dinero Matters, which is amazing. Everyone should run and listen to your podcast. You actually talk about financial anxiety. You say that financial anxiety is real. And what are some mindset shifts that can help Latinas listening feel more confident managing their money, even though they've made mistakes in the past, like we've all made them?
I think what we need to do is just being observant of what is causing anxiety, what's stressing us out. And it really tends to 9 times out of 10, or maybe 8 times out of 10, it's tied to our upbringing. We may have seen, so in my case, I was just told we don't have the money. So I got so used to that. So when it came to adulthood, I thought that's how life should. I mean, even though I wanted to be identified, I wanted to be in a better financial spot. What I didn't notice subconsciously, I was still thinking we don't have enough money. And so when the mind thinks, and I'm not a brain expert, but when the mind thinks one way, your mind wants to serve you and do what and protect you and also just make your dreams come true in a way, like make the reality of what you're thinking. And so, because I was thinking we don't have the money, I was creating that reality, whether it was depleting emergency funds, whatever the case may be. So, I think we need to identify why we're stressed or why we don't feel good about money. And it's usually also a lack of confidence. And again, it is tied to in some way, shape, or form to our upbringing. So we have to identify what that is. So if it's maybe frustration about living paycheck to paycheck. So what about that is frustrating you? Is it because it's just you just haven't made any more money? So are there some things that you can shift? So instead of being stuck in that cycle, what can you do to change it? So it's about thinking simply, what are some simple changes or tweaks that I can make to my life to really get away from that paycheck to paycheck cycle? Is it finding another job? Is it negotiating a raise? Is it maybe minimizing some expenses? Is it a combination of all those things? Because I think we get stuck with trying to minimize our expenses so much that we forget we can bring in more income. Because sometimes it's not, depending on the household, it's not necessarily a spending issue, but it's like an income issue. So I think, so we need to really figure out what that is, right? So again, think to ask yourself, so where is this stemming from? Why am I stressed? What can I do to change it? Because we just get stuck in, okay, this is how it is. It's never going to change. But if you keep repeating that in your mind or even out loud, you're going to continue thinking that way and you just get stuck in this hamster wheel of thinking, right? So it's just about asking yourself, what is one simple tweak that you can make right now, right? So it's as simple as that, even though it is as simple as that, we just don't do it,
That's
right?
right.
And so how can we change or, how can we shift that from not doing, knowing that it's simple, oh, I'll do it another day. So I think you should also tie it of why it's important. What kind of difference is it going to make in your financial life, and that emotional connection as to why it's important. What is it going to do for you? How is it going to change your life? How is it going to change your household life? Is it going to change how is it going to change you reaching your financial goals? So hopefully that helps.
Oh yeah, absolutely love that, Jen, because like you mentioned, a lot of Latinas, it's not a spending issue. Like some of us can like really cut things down. We can
Hmm.
like go back to rice
We're
and beans
thrifty.
for, we're very thrifty. We are not huge spenders. We try to know how to we're born like that, like learning how to stretch the money. So sometimes a lot of the problems are like lies in like a lower income. A lot of Latinas are paid less than regular American. We're like
Hmm.
46 cents less than a regular white American male. So it's just we're already like handing we have a low paying job, typically. So sometimes it's like asking ourselves, like, okay, if I want to be permanently away from the paycheck to paycheck cycle, maybe I need to start earning more money. Maybe I need to starting, a side hustle that makes, asking those $20,000 questions. I love Ramit Sethi. He always encourages his listeners to ask the $20,000 questions. How can I get $20,000 if I'm already earning $32,000 a year? What can I do to earn another 20,000? Maybe bump up my income from 32 to 52, or start a side hustle or a business or something like that. And I admire you, Jen, because you said that you already knew what you wanted to do. You didn't want to become a like do 9 to 5. You designed your lifestyle and your work around the lifestyle that you wanted. A lot of us are going through life in our 20s and 30s. We're just going into life like an autopilot, like, oh well, I
Hmm.
graduated college, I've already done I was so stuck in so many years in a nursing job. I'm a nurse that I hated, and I kept showing up because I was like, well, I already studied that for 4 years, I have my bachelor's in it, I that's all I know how to do, work 12-hour shifts and weekends and all that. So a lot of us are an autopilot, are handed these things, and then we're like, oh, I think that's just how life is going to be for the rest of my life, unless we kind of like stop this paycheck to paycheck cycle and like take a step back and start trying to like, okay, designing our life. I feel like
Yeah.
once you hit 30, sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, is this what life is going to look like for the next 35 years? It's just something that I always encourage the listeners to do.
Plus, I think as Latinas, we are taught to get that education, right? The importance of the education and the career that's going to be that's going to pay you the money and reliable and a stable income, right? We're taught that way, and that's what we think. Like growing up, it was like I knew I was gonna graduate from high school and go to college, but the talks was like engineer or doctors or my parents are educators or teachers. I guess I'm an educator now, but
Yeah.
but I wasn't. It wasn't. I don't think I intentionally. Well, I guess I've always been a little bit of a rebel. I became a rebel after high school. That's another story. But I think it was that rebellious side in me apart, but I also think it's the influence of my parents. My parents, they became educators, and yes, the education was always important, but they also were willing to break the mold. They broke the mold in their relationship, of being like, married to each other. My mom being from Colombia, my dad from being from the States, and so they were like ahead in their years in terms of like doing stuff that wasn't common in that time. So I think that was the influence of them. And I think I was also at that point in my life that I was thinking big and I was still dreaming, even though you get into a point where you stop dreaming, you have to wake yourself up and start dreaming and thinking big and think about the possibilities, because we get stuck in those ruts. Like you were saying, you were like in nursing, it's okay to give yourself permission to do something else, because those skills that you acquired, whether nursing or whatever that you're doing, you can take those and apply it somewhere else, because life is a journey and it's going to take you in zigzags in different directions, and it's okay. Like I was a biology major, I was going to go and become a dentist, and then I realized, oh my gosh, all teeth and all mouths are not created equal, and I don't have a good stomach for any of that. And then I'm like, I'll become a physical therapist, because I was still in that area. And then I met my husband and I got married, and I forgot because I was going to go back to Colombia, and I was like, I'm going to study physical therapy. I met my husband, and it's okay. I think we need to just be flexible and into whatever turn a zigzag life is taking us.
Oh yeah, I love that. I want to encourage people not to get stuck, like break out of the box, or the mold that people like. They're like, "Oh, stay in your lane." I love
Mhm.
that you mentioned the word rebel. Sometimes we have to be rebellious and go against the grain, something that it's secure or something like that, just to step out of your comfort zone. And then sometimes there's a lot of great benefits once you step out of the comfort zone, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was missing on all this," or "I didn't know you could start your own business," or "I didn't know you could make money online." That was something that I was never taught. My mom's like, go to college, graduate, work until you die. And it's like, oh, it was never taught like, oh, you could work from home, you could make money online. It was just something that we were not taught. So I love that you mentioned that, to go ahead and step into things that will definitely help you. Debt feels like it's never ending, like a never ending cycle for many of my listeners. Can you break down how interest rates works on debt and why it keeps so many people stuck in them?
Yeah, well, there's different types of debt, and the interest rates, like for example, on credit card debt, are really sky high. And typically, and there's so that's the consumer debt with in terms of credit cards. We are taught, I don't think we're taught to use them effectively. So, like if you go to a bank, and let's say you're trying to build your credit, and I don't think they're doing it intentionally in a bad way, but they will tell you, let's open up this credit card, start charging and paying the minimum on your account or minimum payment, right? It is a way to build credit, but it's an expensive way to build credit because if you pay the minimum amount of what you owe on that credit card, you're going to have interest to pay. And it will accumulate, especially if you continue to use the card and pay the minimum. There's going to be a balance, and that balance is going to get charged interest. And it really can get out of hand. So one way, I know I'm veering off, kind of going in different directions with credit with interest, because your question was learning, understanding interest.
On credit cards, especially when they're at 31. Like I've had some of my students that I've helped get out of debt. Some of their interest rates in Klarna or like pay now, buy now, pay later are
Yeah.
usually in the 32%. They're usually in the 27.99. That's what I've seen lately. And then they're like paying these monthly interest because they don't have enough money to pay the entire thing in full. So every
Mhm.
month they're getting charged 27.99 to 31.99
Yeah.
each month.
So one, you can, there are some tools out there to help you not, it's not going to pay the debt for you, but to help you have a clear picture of how you can get out of debt. And to be able to get out of debt faster, you have to have some extra money, right? So again, you need to ask yourself how, that's why these tools are good, because there's a tool called powerpay.org. It's not the only tool where you plug in your debts, you plug in your credit card, the interest rate, the minimum payment that's due, the total balance, all that. And it calculates if you do this minimum payment, you will pay your credit card off in May 2000, whatever. It'll tell you the month, date, year, and how much interest you're paying off. And then it gives you the option, okay, what if I paid $50 extra a month on this credit card? How much will that reduce in time and in interest to be able to pay this off? So it allows you to think, you're not committing to paying extra $50 or $100, but it allows you to visualize what that can look like. So I think tools like that are helpful because maybe you don't have the $50 right now, or maybe you don't have the $100 extra right now. But if you did, it would make a huge world of difference, right? So then that's going to motivate you. Well, wow, if I could do that with $50 or $100 a month, how can I increase my income by that much, right? Or even $150 or whatever that may be. So I think it's one, having the clarity of what your debt payoff date can be, what that can look like, how you can get there, right? In terms of how much extra money a month. And then number two, that'll help you to think, okay, if this is what I need, how can I make that a reality? How can I have that extra income? Again, it could be minimizing your expenses, but really more about bringing more income
I love
too.
that. That's such a good idea because if you did bring An extra income of $500 a month or $1,000 extra a month, a lot of people want to pocket that. When we were
Yeah.
paying off debt, my husband and I was side hustling like crazy. I was working for two different hospitals and side hustling, working from home as well. And any money that I would receive extra from my side hustle, I never paid myself. It went straight to
Mm.
credit cards. And some months I started like earning $350 a month, and then I grew that side hustle to like $2,000 a month extra. So my income went from like getting paid $2,000 a month as a nurse to like $5,000 a month because of my side hustle. So what I would do, I'd never paid myself from the extra money. I was like, this is going straight towards debt. So some months I would send $2,500 extra on top of my minimum payments towards the debt. But we had a lot of debt, when we were paying
Right.
off. But that's how we were able to kind of like snowball it and clear it off quickly. And I don't feel like a lot of people are talking about the strategies or how to do that. So I would definitely, if I'm in debt, if I were to, I hope I'm not, but if you guys are, if anybody listening is like in a lot of credit card debt, I would highly recommend, like you said, like reverse engineer,
Right.
and go into that website and see like, okay, this is how much I owe. If I send an extra 500, if I send an extra 1,200 each month, how quickly can I get rid of this?
Yes, there's another way, but you have to be a really committed and you have to be a responsible credit card user. Another way that you can do it, especially if you have good credit and if you get, like, this is not for everyone. I'm going to say this is not for everyone, but if you have good credit, and you consider yourself a responsible credit card user, maybe you just got into credit card debt and you're just trying to get out of it, is using balance transfers offers. So that is another way, but you would, no kidding, have to commit. And so essentially that would be a different credit card. Like, I would not recommend this on the credit card. I would only recommend it also just using a separate credit card where you're not doing anything else but transferring that balance, and you would have to commit to that promotional period. So if it's 10 months and you're trying to pay $6,000, let's say that's the balance, you would, no kidding, want to pay that $6,000 in that 10-month period if it's like a 0% or 1% or whatever it is, low interest, right? So the advantage is you can have a low interest. You're going to have to pay some sort of fee because the credit card company wants to make money. And you have the ability to, if you pay it in that promotional period, you're not going to, you're going to pay either 0 or 1% interest or whatever that may be. I haven't seen those, but then I've nixed my offers and I've deleted myself from those things. But so that is a way. But again, I'm going to stress again, you have to, no kidding, pay that off, because then after that, that interest rate is going to go way up. So if you're have to be honest with yourself, if you've been just getting yourself in credit card debt and it's out of control, this might not be for you. But if you're ready to make the change and you can commit, that is another possibility.
Oh yeah, I love doing balance transfer. I know when we had multiple credit cards, so we lined them all up doing that snowball. So we wrote the smallest credit card to the largest credit card, and then we did start it as soon as we started knocking the first domino or paying off the first credit card and the second one. Our credit score increased a bit. So
Okay.
then we qualified for those balance transfer, and then we got a promotional in the mail like, hey, open this brand new credit card at 0% for the next, 12 months. And we were like, ooh, let's go ahead, and because we were paying in, let me tell you, Jen, we were paying interest on every single credit card each month. As we started the debt snowball, it was not a perfect situation, but we already knew that, and we were like committed to paying it off and becoming credit card debt free. So a lot of us are starting, from that. But I love that strategy. And as soon as you start paying those off, like I mentioned it for anybody listening, once you start your debt snowball and you knock off the first lower credit cards off, your credit score will definitely improve and you might qualify for that balance transfer, and then put the last credit cards that are higher, that are still earning interest in those. Well, by the time you get to them, they'll be at zero interest. But yeah, you definitely want to have a strategy on how to pay it all off and hopefully never going back into credit card debt.
Yeah, and then, once you're working on that, like paying off your debt, just addressing how did I get here, addressing, maybe some of the financial habits that got you into that credit card debt, because it's like dieting, right? You can lose a bunch of weight and then you can gain it right back if you don't address how you got there. So it's really important to address what it is, how you got there. Maybe it was like an emergency and there was a job loss, or maybe it was like some financial habits that you have that you like to get the latest and the greatest, whether, I don't know, shoes, purses, or clothes, and you just didn't pay it off. And so really being really honest with yourself is
I
important.
love that. Oh yes, like a self-discovery journey as you pay off your debt. You're like, okay, and you start, thinking of money differently as well. I just pulled up a quote from Albert Einstein. He actually is the famous quote that he said, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays for it." Most Latinas in our community are paying the high interest instead of earning it. Like he said, why do you think that happens so often, especially in the Latina community?
How I think because we get caught up in just surviving, right? And surviving instead of thriving. And I think we have to go from surviving to start thriving. And really, there's a great tool on investor.gov where it's where you can see and visualize the power of compound interest. So if you go on that tool, you can, let's say you can pretend this is a tool, so it has to be the reality, but you can visualize. Let's say you have some $5,000 to invest, and you decide, well, now I've gotten out of credit card debt, I have $100. I don't know, every single month to invest. Okay, and then I'm going to invest this for 20 more years. How much can my money grow? And it's a really powerful tool because we don't know what's possible for us, I think also, but wealth is possible for us. We just have to see the possibilities and really understanding and seeing the power of compound interest, especially using tools like that. A compound calculator at investor.gov is powerful because it shows, because you don't have to have a ton of money to start investing. You can have a little and make really good progress that way.
I love it. Thank you so much for encouraging us to go see that because I was shocked. No one ever taught me this. When I looked up his quote, I never even knew this. I was in that percentage that he says, "He who doesn't pays for it." And I'm telling you, Jen, we paid for it in our 20s. All of my 20s, we were in credit card debt and we paid every penny in interest rates. I'm telling you, we were, like you said, surviving. We were definitely not thriving. So this is why we did a huge mindset shift and we were like, we cannot do this in our 30s. Our
Right.
30s are going to look so different and we're going to be doing exactly what Albert Einstein said. He who understands, which I understand it now. I understand the power of compound interest now in my 30s. I didn't in my 20s. No one ever taught me this. Like I said, my mom, she couldn't, she's never invested a penny in her life, so she couldn't teach me something she didn't know. But through fumbling and stumbling into getting better with money, this is how I learned. I was like, wow, his quote is really powerful, and I really swear by it because it's so true. It's like it is the eighth wonder of the world. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. And that was me in my 20s. I paid for every single interest rate. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm a little bit more savvier with money. I now earn interest, so like that's where I want everybody listening to go from paying always interest in their credit cards, interest on, financing their way through life, financing their car loans, financing their phone and paying an interest on that, financing this, financing that. And basically they're paying interest. I want them to go from paying to then earning it in the compound. And it's not until you go into that investorcalculator.gov that you see these numbers and you're like, oh my gosh, if I just invested $50, those $50 that I invest now that I'm turning 30, all the way until I'm 65, that turns into like $120,000,
Yeah.
So it's really powerful.
It is. It is. And I think visualizing and seeing it is half of the battle.
Yes, and where is it that we go to see it, to see the compound?
Yeah, if you just go investor.gov, there should be like a menu and you can just search for the compound calculator
Love it. Yeah, just put it on Google, compound
or
calculator. You'll
compound
be
interest. Yeah.
amazed. Yeah,
Yeah.
compound interest calculator. And the same thing works in reverse. If you are paying 27.99 interest rates or 31.99 interest rates, it compounds and you're paying, you know what I mean? The same thing is
It's
in reverse. So it's like you don't want to be on that other side where you're paying for it. You want to be the smart one like Albert Einstein and be earning it.
yeah,
So
for sure. For sure.
Jen, a lot of listeners are struggling with credit cards, student loans, car loans, and they're just working to pay off interest. How can someone start shifting from paying interest to actually earning it?
Well, one, you want to start where you're at. If you're struggling, because whether the income or just a lot of that, you want to just start with where you're at and understand where you're at financially. Like what I call it your bottom line. What is your bottom line number to understand? And that is basically your income minus all your expenses. And in order to know that, you have to have an understanding of where you're spending your money and what you're left with, right? And so you have to have an understanding of what that is. What do you have to work with to be able to really pay that debt off?
Right on. Because, that helps them like go from earning, like go from paying for interest to like earning it. Jen, on the flip side, compound interest can work for you on your favor if you invest and save. Can you share simple ways listeners can start growing their money even with small amounts?
Yeah. So you have high yield savings accounts that you can open up, and that's a great way to have your money grow for you. You also can open up a brokerage account. You have two ways. You can do a robo advisor, or you can have a brokerage account like a Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab. So I call that the DIY investing. So it just depends on how much time you want to put. They're both doable. It's just the Fidelity and the Charles Schwab, all those, you have to learn about investing. You have to learn their platform, whether the robo advisors like Betterment or Elvest or those platforms. They're more consumer friendly, if you will, but they have a higher fee. They have a higher cost because of that convenience, if you will. So the difference with that is that you, with the robo advisors like Betterment and Elvest and things of that sort, the Wealthfront, they will ask you some questions about your goals, and then from there they'll give you some advice. Well, based on your goals and everything, we recommend that you can invest it in such and such fund. So it tells you like what you can invest, whereas in Fidelity, Charles Schwab, you're basically on your own. You can open a Roth and so forth, but then you have to choose what funds to that you need to invest in. So it depends on like what you're willing to do, and I would choose what you're willing. What are you going to get started and not delay the ball? Delay getting started in investing.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Even though you're still paying off debt, once you clear off your high interest debt, like high interest debt in personal finance is considered anything above 7%. Once you clear all that, then you're able to, if you just have student loans left or a car loan left or a personal loan that's below 7%, then you're definitely ready to start investing, and it doesn't take a lot of money. For someone who's currently paying high interest like credit card debts, should they focus on paying off debt before investing, or can they do both at the same
You can
time?
do both. There's no rule like with personal finance, there's not one way to do it, right? Some experts may say, "Oh, pay off your debt before you start investing." I say if you want to get started investing now and pay off your debt, why not? There's not, one perfect or, right way to do it. The way is the way that you want to do it.
I love that. I want more Latinas actually to start investing it and doing a DIYing themselves, because it's not as hard
No.
as people make it seem. You could totally open a brokerage on your own. You could definitely pick your funds and all that once you clear high interest debt, or you
There's
could
a
do it,
lot of education out there, a lot of videos, and a lot of Latinas that are teaching about investing. So there's that as well.
I love that. And I'm always, Jen, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm always yelling on social media and on my TikTok lives. I'm like, whoever's listening, I'm like, you guys, you need to open your high yield savings account. I usually send them DMs to my students and I'm like, hey, have you opened your high yield savings account yet? And many of them, Jen, you'd be surprised, are like, nope, I haven't. They don't see the importance of opening a high yield savings account. I guess it's because a lot of us Latinas grew up hearing that you better save your money in a regular bank account. It's the best thing they can do. But can you explain us what's the difference between saving money in a regular savings account versus a high yield savings account?
A higher interest right now in a regular savings account, you get 0.01% interest. And in a high yield savings, I think it's averaging maybe 3.5, 3.7, somewhere at this moment. Now, granted, because of the economy, that interest rate has been going down, but it's still a lot higher than 0.01%. So there's that. So you will see your money grow definitely much quicker than at 0.01%.
Oh, yeah, it's a big difference, like earning a
Big
penny
difference.
versus earning $100 at the end of the year. If you have your emergency parked, I'd rather anyone listening, I'd rather you have your emergency fund parked in a high yield savings account earning you 3.5% or 4.5% rather than earning you a penny every year. It's a no brainer. And a lot of high yield savings account are free to open. They don't have any minimum requirements. So this is great for you to kind of like start getting your feet wet into starting to earn interest instead of paying for it.
And it's an easy way to earn that money.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Hold on, I forgot my question. Hang on just a second. So many Latinas feel like they need to have a lot of money to start investing. What's the first good step for someone who wants to start but feels intimidated?
Well, for a good first step, well, as I mentioned earlier, this is not the step. As I mentioned earlier, you can start. You don't have to have a lot of money. You can start where you're at. I'm a big proponent about starting where you're at with what you have. And so you want, in terms of the first step, you want to identify what do you want to invest for? Are you investing for retirement? Are you wanting to invest just in a brokerage account just to try in different, whether index funds, and I don't think we're going to get into that, and that's not my area of expertise, but index funds or those type of things are you wanting, or what are you investing for? What are your goals for investing? And really have an understanding of the different ways that you can invest. Like I said, just a brokerage where it's like you can take it out, when you need it, or are you wanting to invest more really long term, like using a Roth, or if you have, and plus, we haven't touched this, but if you are working and you have access and the benefit of a 401k and your employer matches, make sure you take that matching money. That is free money. And so definitely, if you have that, start there. Because it's going to do two things. It's going to get you started in investing because you have that draw. Hey, your employer is going to match X percent. Then you're going to motivated to put that X percent of money. Number two, with the 401k, it's going to minimize your tax liability because for 401k, what's happening is that you get paid, but from there you're investing whether I don't know $500 a month, and so if your paycheck is I don't know $5,000 and you're investing $500 a month, that means there's $4,500 left, right, before it hits your account. So that $4,500, it's what you're being taxed on, versus if you weren't investing, you're being taxed on $5,000, right? So that that adds up. So if you have a 401k accessible to you, definitely that's a no-brainer. Make sure that you do that. And if you're just like, what do I start investing in? So you don't have to, if you want to just make sure you start investing, you can always change it. Just look about target date funds. There's, pros and cons, but really target date funds is kind of a safe way of investing in a sense, because you can choose the date that you quote unquote want to retire, and it automatically rebalances those funds. Meaning, if you're in your 20s right now, it's going to put you in funds that are more aggressive, and as you age, it rebalances where the funds are less aggressive. So I would definitely start there. If you don't have a 401k, look at opening a Roth. So the Roth works a little different from the 4K. So the Roth, is post-tax dollars. So let's say in that scenario, you're getting a paycheck that's $5,000, then you're taxed on that $5,000. And then from there, you invest that 500. So, but the difference is with the Roth, when you go to, when you're, let's say, fast forward to retirement, you're not paying money, you're not paying taxes on the money that you draw out. Versus the 401k, you didn't pay the taxes at the beginning. When you go to take the money out of retirement, that's when you pay the taxes. So those are just some things.
Those are amazing. Yeah. If anybody's listening and it's doing up to the match and also investing outside of work, like you're doing phenomenal, fantastic, like personal finance. You're ahead of most people, most 40-year-olds and most 50-year-olds. So I love that. I love that you can, that's the best place to start is the best place to start investing. It's at your own job with your own benefits and making sure that you're getting your 401k up to the match. So if they match you 3%, make sure that you're investing 3%, and then every year that'll be 6% that's going towards your retirement. And then there's other, like you mentioned, a Roth IRA would be the second step for them to start doing, outside of their, invest up to the match in their 401k, and then start their Roth IRA outside of work. And Jen, I do have a friend. She just recently turned 40 this year, so about a month ago. And we were just talking about investment. I'm like, hey, I was trying to say, the time's ticking or anything like that, but I was like, hey, have you thought about investing? She has not invested a penny. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you just turned 40. Like, I was freaking out, and I'm not even 40, I was like, oh my gosh, you need to start. And she's like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, check your job. So the first thing I told her was like, okay, go towards your employer, check if you get a 401k. And she checks and she's like, oh yeah, I have access to a 401k. And like, great. Do they match? No, they don't match. And I was like, no, okay, it's better for you to start, like invest outside of work in your case. That way you just focus on, doing your Roth IRA first, maxing that out. And if she does it, we actually use that calculator that you mentioned earlier, the compound calculator. And I was like, let me help you out, girlfriend. Because she doesn't have a penny invested, but we went on the calculator and then we went on investor.gov, and then she typed in, if she invests, I think it's like $583 to max it out every year. If she did that for the next 25 years, because she's 40, so by the time she turns 65, actually it will turn into $2.8 million. And I was like, see, you're still on time. Like, you're still early. Like, you don't have any money invested. But if you started today at 40 years old, you would still have like $2.8 million by retirement. And she's all excited. So I sort of like started, coaching her to like get going, because a lot of us, Jen, that's another thing that I've learned. A lot of my listeners, a lot of Latinas in their 20s and 30s, they're putting off investments. They're putting off investing. They don't really worry about retirement. Why should they start learning to invest now?
Because the power of compound interest is on your side. So with the power of compound interest, if you start earlier in your 20s or your 30s, you don't have to invest as much. So where you were referencing your friend, if she were to invest $100 a month, it's not gonna do as much for her. But that doesn't mean if you're listening right now and you're like, well, I'm in my 40s or in my 50s, you can still invest and reach a goal, right? But if you're in your 20s or your 30s, that means that you don't have to worry about putting $1,000 every single month to invest. You can just start out with what you have, and it's going to go a long way because it has a long time to grow. Because think about compound interest as just basically interest multiplying about interest. So if you put $500 or $200 a month, so there's the interest multiplying, and then you put another $200, it's multiplying upon all the interest that previously, and it just continues to do that. So it's like it's on steroids, interest upon interest, and it's just on steroids. And so the longer, you have to invest, the better, because you don't have to put as much effort financially. So.
I love it. I love it. This is why Albert Einstein called the compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Because, like you said, it just starts snowballing. It starts like earning money. Money starts earning money. It's like you planting baby money tree, and then the money tree starts producing eggs, and then like you just get a bunch, you
Yeah.
know. So that's exactly how the compound investing works, and especially if you're in your 20s and 30s, that's the last thing in your mind, you know. Like you said, a lot of Latinas like us in that at that age were like struggling just to survive. It's like investing is nowhere near. You do have the time for it to start compounding like that, but a lot of us don't have our money together so we can then start investing. So this is why I always love doing these podcast episodes and letting people to like go ahead and start so they can
Hmm.
benefit from that compound. But many Latinas struggle with saving money because it feels impossible with bills and family obligations. What's one realistic saving strategy that actually works?
Is automating your savings. So one, remember I talked about that understanding your bottom line number. So you have to understand like where your money is going, right? But really prioritizing instead of obviously you're prioritizing your bills, right? Why not prioritize yourself? Right. And so basically that's what that means, paying yourself first. But then you're thinking, but what if I don't have enough to pay the bills? That's, right. That's where that stems from. Well, if I pay myself right now and put money in savings, what if I don't have? Then create a plan where you can, right? So it's just a matter of shifting and putting, okay, at $100 or whatever that may be for that month, and automating that trend, putting that on automated.
Yeah,
You're putting those transfers automatically,
that's right.
because once you start doing that and once that money starts going, you're not gonna miss it. If you start missing it, that means you have to really analyze and evaluate how you're spending and your budget. If hopefully you're using a budget. So really prioritize and make sure, treat that savings like a bill. You're already prioritizing your bills, prioritize that emergency. And that's what I have to say about that, because once you do that, it becomes easier and easier. And
To
again,
save you.
if you're afraid, that means you really have to take a good look of what's going on with your numbers and with your spending. And you may have to reevaluate, you have to make a shift, you have to do something, because you really got to prioritize yourself.
And we hear a lot about increasing our income, especially through side hustles or investing or negotiating salaries. What's the most effective way for Latinas to make more money without burning out?
I love that you said without burning out, because that's important. So really you have to identify, well, I think the first step before you identify what kind of side hustle, you want to be smart about it. So how, again, this goes back to that bottom line number, your income minus expenses. So knowing what you have or what you don't have will help you create a goal as to what you need in income. So instead of I need to have a side hustle, you need to go in and, okay, I need to have a side hustle that earns X amount of money. You have to go in it with a tangible number, because then you're just working to earn money. You want to be working to earn a tangible amount of money that you have a place for it, right? You just don't want to be working to earn more money. You want to be working smartly. So first identify what is that goal of income that you need. Then from there, you can identify, okay, what is the best way to achieve this? Understanding how your household run is what your life is like. Like maybe you have a 9 to 5 that's really pressing, and by the time you come home is you're just tired and you're just worn out. Then what can you do that can get you to that dollar amount? Because understanding that dollar amount, then you can work backwards, because it may not be, I mean, it may be that you would do Uber Eats, but it may be that you do something else that on the weekend you can earn that money. So it's identifying what kind of side hustle you can do. And I think for those instances, you would want to identify a side hustle that pays right immediately. Like, so not necessarily a blog, because a blog is not going to, it is a side hustle, but it's a long-term side hustle. So, but something like Uber Eats or things like that that you can earn right away, or tutoring, or taking care, or dog walking, or whatever that may be. But something that the other part too, besides identifying how much income, identifying the time that you have and that you're not going to burn yourself out, is doing something that you enjoy. Don't
I
just do
love that.
Uber Eats. because it brings income. You can, if you don't, I mean, you can choose to do something that you enjoy, especially if you're just like, I'm just going to do it for X amount of time because I want to get to this goal really fast. That's another, that's reasonable. But don't just do it. You want to identify something that you enjoy, and look at your skill set that you already have. Think about what you do for your job. Maybe that could be turned into consulting, and that could be a side hustle. So look at those things. But I think the most important thing when it comes to side hustle is to really identify the goal, that dollar amount that you're needing. So then from there, you can work backwards and know, okay, in this type of side hustle, it's going to take me X amount of hours to get to that dollar amount, right? So I think that's the big critical part, because I see a lot of people, oh, I just need a side hustle. Okay, great. But are we just working and working and working? Or do we want to be working more smartly?
I like that. And many Latinas feel the pressure to help family financially, even though they're struggling themselves. How can we set financial boundaries while still supporting our loved ones?
Yeah, this touches me to the core. And why I say that, because we have experience in my marriage where my husband's not Latino, but helping family has been a big thing. So when we first got married, he's the type, big heart, and I'm big hearted too. But I remember I came from a family where we always didn't. The thing was, we don't have the money. So in my brain, I'm like, well, we don't have the money to help family. In his brain, it was like, well, I'll go to work to make money so we can spend it how we want to. So it got to a point where it was just, okay, we're just gifting money to family members. And I'm like, but we have to take care of our own stuff. So what we ended up doing is that we created, over time, we didn't figure it out right away, because when you're young, sometimes you don't see things right away, and that's just what it is. But we created a budget line item for family. And so it's part of our savings. It's part of our savings. And whatever made sense. It was not the biggest priority, like our savings for like emergencies or things of that sort. But it was whatever we were able to save, we set it aside. And whatever was in that, that savings bucket, if you will, that's what we had. And if a family member needed, we would go and look at that, and this is what we have and this is all we have. Because then what happens is it really interrupts, if you will, your bill, the money that you have for bills or your savings or investing. You don't want to do that. So that's how we finally figured it out, the light bulb moment years later. But that's what's worked for us.
That's awesome. Yeah, just giving yourself a limit, a budget, like, hey, I can only
Correct.
give out X amount. And if there's no money in the bucket right now because someone else took it, like, we're not going to be gifting this every month. You know what I mean? It's just, and it's not a top priority. It's whatever. I love that. I love setting boundaries like that because family can definitely take advantage of us young ones, especially. So I love that. And your podcast, Her Money Matters, is all about empowering Latinas with their money. What's one of your favorite money success stories that proves that financial freedom is possible for all of us?
Oh my gosh. So with her, it was called Her Money Matters, and then it became Her Dino Matters. Almost 10 years.
My
Success
goodness.
story. Yeah, it's been a bit.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
it's been a while. I don't know if we've featured this on the podcast, because really I've interviewed like experts. Sometimes I'll interview listeners, but sometimes people or clients that I've worked with are kind of shy to come on the podcast. But in terms of people that I have worked with, I think the most rewarding, yes, the ones that I've worked with, but I think the even more rewarding are those that I haven't worked with that have made a change in their life as a result of what they've learned from the podcast. So they didn't pay me any money. They just, from listening from the podcast, they made a change. And I've had
That's
emails like
awesome.
that where I've gotten emails where, because of, the podcast, I've gotten out of debt, the credit card debt or a student loan debt or things of that sort, or I actually started investing, those type of things. So there's not one specific story, but it's stories like that. And I think for me, yes, the people that when I was coaching and stuff, seeing a change in their lives is rewarding, but also just like the listeners, the ones that that don't necessarily pay me, but they have actually taken
Your
the
advice.
opportunity
Yeah.
and or not even just my advice, but from guests and stuff, and applied it and made a real change in their lives. So that I think that's amazing.
I love that. I love that. That anybody can change their lives. You just have to have the willpower and the why, like a strong why.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's not an overnight thing. It's not like, oh, you just
Mm-mm.
pay off debt in next month. Sometimes, you don't have no motivation to send money extra towards debt. You're like, well, why can't I just buy the shoes? Or like, why can't I just go to this concert? So yeah, I love that. And where can listeners connect with you to learn more about your work and tune into your podcast, Her Dinero Matters?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram with you can simply search for me for Jen Hemphill, or you can Google me Jen Hemphill, and you can find me the podcast, all the things. So I'm easily found with my name Jen Hemphill or Herding Matters.
Thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing your wisdom and little tough love for all of us. I loved it, Jen. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you do. Keep it up.
Thanks. Wow, what an amazing conversation with Jen today. I don't know about you, but I feel so inspired to take action and step into financial freedom. She reminded us that financial freedom isn't just for other people, it's for us Latinas, and it all starts with one simple step. So, amiga, what's your biggest takeaway from today's episode? Screenshot this episode and tag me at Budget Saving Blog and let me know. And if you loved what Jen had to say, go check her podcast out. Her Dinero Matters. And follow her for more money wisdom. If you're ready to start your own financial freedom journey, don't forget to download my free guide, Break Free from the Paycheck to Paycheck Cycle, below so you can get started. Just head on to the link in the show notes. And one last thing, if this episode helped you, share it with a friend. Let's keep this movement going and help more Latinas step into financial confidence. Gracias again for tuning in. Until next time, keep making those money moves.